FM 90. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Spectrum, coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90, which is also broadcasting live on its website, www.radio1fm90.com. While on that website, you click on the icon with the word Listen Live. We are also live on the different radio listening apps, which can be obtained from the Google stores of your smartphone. Download any, look for Radio 1 FM 90. And as long as you have an internet connection, you'll be able to listen to us from anywhere across this globe. Radio 1 is also live on DSTV. Our audio channel there is 897. There are two ways to contribute to this discussion. One of the ways is to send us a message on our WhatsApp line, which is 0703 090 090. Tell us where you are, and it could be a question or comment. Put it across in a message form, and the panelists in studio will be able to respond to you. The other option is actually to phone in. Time allowing, I'll open the phone lines for you to actually do so. Today we'll be discussing the challenge of aflatoxins in Uganda. Now, the presence of aflatoxins in Ugandan cereals, especially maize, has been described as a health threat, but also a major hurdle to Ugandan maize produce entering competitive markets. Experts have also linked it to some cancers that are common now, and instances where maize has actually been rejected in some markets. So this evening, I have experts in studio to share more about this matter, for you to understand the challenge at hand and how, as a country, we can confront it for a better future. I have three guests in studio. Professor Achleo Kaya. He is from the Department of Food Technology and Nutrition of Makerere University. He has been a researcher on aflatoxins for over 2 decades. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Professor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwago. Good evening.
All right, thank you very much for making time to be with us. Also in studio, Mr. David Tumwesige. He's a nutritionist at the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, but he also works there in another capacity. He'll be able to tell us his elaborative title in detail when time comes. Thank you very much, Mr. Tumwesige, for joining us here on Spectrum.
Good evening, Mr. Kwago and the listeners.
Am I right to describe you as a nutritionist from the ministry? What exactly do you do there? Please move closer to the mic.
I'm a senior agriculture officer in charge of nutrition.
Senior agriculture officer in
the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Nice having you, Mr. Tumwesige. Also in studio, Mr. Grace Musimami Keziron. He is a food safety evangelist, but I also know he works in other capacity as the General Secretary of the Uganda Forum for Agricultural Advisory Services. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Musimami.
Thank you. Good evening, our listeners. I'm happy to be here today.
All right. Let's begin with you, Professor. When we talk about aflatoxins, what exactly are we talking about, and why should we be concerned as a country?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwago. Good evening once again, our dear listeners. The subject of aflatoxin is a very important one. It is actually a major component of food safety. The previous, I think month, we started a serious campaign on food safety. And the aflatoxin actually has come out as a major subject because of the effects that I'm going to talk about. When you talk about aflatoxin, we are referring to those toxins which are produced by a fungus known as Aspergillus flavus. So, when we talk about food safety, we refer to agents that normally, contaminate food, which can be in the form of biological. Those are the agents that have got life, like microorganisms. Then those which are chemical, they don't have any life. So we are talking about like pesticide residues, aflatoxins, the chemicals which can be consumed and cause danger, harm to the consumer. And then the physical, agents, which are objects actually like metals, stones, etc. So aflatoxin is a chemical. But this time, this chemical is produced by microorganisms of the fungal type group. So the fungus which produces aflatoxins mainly is known as Aspergillus flavus. That's the scientific name. and aspergillus flavus toxins gives us the name aflatoxins. So when the produce is drying, this fungus likes very much low moisture content foods. So most of these dried foods, like maize, as you have mentioned, groundnuts, sorghum, rice, soybean, cassava, dried cassava, are very good candidates for this fungus. And because it also contaminates these raw materials, by the way, even fish, including mukene, which is dried, can be dried, So because it is associated with some of these ingredients that make animal feeds, so aflatoxins can also be found in animal feeds. So when an animal eats, contaminated feeds, it can also be, affected. And as I speak now, I come from Madudu. I'm very happy that I come from that village known as Madudu in Mubende. And as I speak now, last month, my father lost 114 birds because of consuming feeds which were contaminated with aflatoxins. So the moment he changed the feeds, the birds stopped dying. There was no other treatment that was given to them. So because of that, these grains, the way they are handled, because normally farmers use rudimentary technologies in handling these produce. That's why we have a serious problem in aflatoxins. Two, this fungus, finds its way into the food, because of the environment that we have. Uganda is in a tropical, environment. We are always saying that we are endowed with the best temperature, rainfall, etc. Even these fungi, even microorganisms, most of the microorganisms enjoy this kind of environment. That's why we have several tropical diseases. So the fungus will contaminate the grains, and then as it eats, it produces these toxins. So why are we really bothered about these toxins? Number one, aflatoxins can be of a healthy consequence, because as you have mentioned, they have been linked to liver cancer. As if that is not enough, they can cause what we call acute toxicity, meaning that if you eat a foodstuff containing high doses of aflatoxins, you can die at once. You can die there and then. Then the cancer manifests itself as chronic toxicity, meaning that you are eating low doses of the food, contaminated food, and because of that, you get the levels increasing and increasing and increasing slowly by slowly, and then eventually, you reach a level where now you develop into cancer. Now, the other issue is about trade. Our produce, like maize, especially maize actually, which we export, to neighboring countries, has been rejected by Kenya, has been rejected by South Sudan, as you have heard. And now these countries are also, importing our maize. The level of export has reduced. And because of that effect, the price of maize has remained low this season, because less of the maize is being exported outside the country. So meaning that and then the level at which farmers produced maize was actually very high. So we have got a lot of maize which is not being now, exported, and that means now the price has been, quite low, and is going to remain low for some bit of time.
Which affects the farmers.
Exactly, for
Well,
the
let's hear
farmers.
from
And then, of course, there's the food security issue. Also, because if food is rejected, it's supposed to be destroyed, meaning that it's not going to be available to the consumers. So that is a food security issue, very, very, very much.
Right.
Thank you.
Rolf, I'll be coming back to you to actually see from your expertise how we can deal with this problem, because you have identified in some bits what could be the causes, especially when it comes to issues of post-harvest handling. I had you almost going through that area, but I'll be coming back to you. But let's go to the consumer, Mr. Msamami. You as a consumer and as somebody who advocates for clean food or good food in our country, have you been aware about aflatoxins, and do you think majority of Ugandans even understand how can they actually avoid being in danger?
Thank you very much. I'm very sure that many of us are aware about aflatoxins. The call and campaign towards an aflatoxin-free food system has been here for quite a while. In 2016, the president, with Professor Kaya here, who I'm honored to be with in studio, were in Munyonyo in a big African gathering on aflatoxin, and he pronounced himself on this. He was even able to mention that he checks whatever food he's eating. That is the president. And he described it. You know, when you say aflatoxin, he said people may not understand. So he went down to call it omuumbo. Omuumbo mubinyewa, omuumbo mumaize. So the president himself broke it down. So awareness has been created, and many of us know. However, not being
many of you in suits, no.
No, many consumers and
really?
Many producers, you've been hearing about these campaigns of don't dry your maize on the ground, don't dry coffee on the ground. But people have looked at it at a more economic sense. That if you dry your maize, World Food Program will not buy your maize.
It will be dirty.
It will be dirty. And they've not conceptualized it to understand that it is actually about the aflatoxin infestation in the product.
Even not giving the maize enough time to dry.
To dry, exactly, yes. So even it rolls down, but our people, still you'll find that the middleman is looking for quick numbers and making money. So they will pick it from the farmer, and then they will not be able to educate the farmer that this is not good, this is not right. So awareness has been there, and we knew, and we've all known about it. But when you hear stories of impact like what Professor just mentioned, that his father lost 150 birds, those are stories that are not being told. And our people listen to stories to say, COVID has killed, there are people dying of COVID. That's when people start now putting on masks. I'll quickly tell you that from a layman's point as a consumer, I tell people that if you walked into Cancer Institute today, you'll be able to find that I think almost 50% are from the eastern part of this country. Basoga, Bateso, people from Teso region. And what are the staple foods for these people? Maize and groundnuts. So when you go to talk about hepatitis B, when there was a heavy outbreak, it was the north. And what is the staple food? These people are depending on grains. But these statistics are not coming out. I keep asking Professor when I meet him that the beer we drink, how safe is the sorghum? But that is for another day. But our people react to problems. So we are here trying to do more sensitization to say this is not just the word aflatoxin. This is food poison. And food poison that we ourselves as farmers, ourselves as middlemen, as traders are actually pushing for other and consuming in the long run.
All right. Let's say from David, who is from the Ministry of Agriculture. This is both a policy and also an issue of implementation and awareness, looking at what Professor and Mr. Msamami have shared so far. As the Minister of Agriculture, you are aware of this challenge, and what are the policy measures in place to actually deal with this, and are you responding to this challenge?
Thank you so much, Ms. Alkwago, and the previous speakers, Professor Kaya and my brother, President Msimami, who are so passionate about aflatoxins, and they've played a big role in the fight against aflatoxins. First of all, I'm here on behalf of the Minister of Agriculture and Minister and Fisheries, representing the Assistant Commissioner, Ms. Alex Wambona, who was meant to be here. Nevertheless, we, as a ministry, I wouldn't say we at policy level, I don't want to claim that we are fighting aflatoxins alone, because the aflatoxin fight is actually, it takes a team. It takes everybody along the value chain, the traders, the consumers, the researchers. But Minister of Agriculture and Minister of Fisheries is mandated by the Constitutional Republic of Uganda of 1995 to ensure and guarantee production of safe food for the entire population, for healthy population. So as a mandate of producing food, we realize we have a challenge of these dangerous toxins. I want to, incidentally, when you're communicating aflatoxins, it's quite a complex science that needs to be toned down for listeners out there to understand what we're talking about. This is a natural poison, like Professor said, and Grace, produced by natural organisms like the molds of the type Professor emphasized as Aspergillus flavus majorly, that comes out of poor handling of food. However, I want to to emphasize that the problem of aflatoxins starts way back from the field. That's when now agriculture comes in. Colleagues will agree that we have the pre-harvest stages and then post-harvest stages. Now at pre-harvest, as Minister of Agriculture at policy level, we have quite a number of policies. I'll call them policy frameworks. One, Uganda is a ratified member of the international, regional, and national policy protocols, which we implement, right from the ACTG that I may not go through, and then the African Union policy-related frameworks, and then the national. So from the 1995 Constitution, we are mandated to ensure, at policy level, to ensure that people have safe food, enough safe food in terms of food security. And two, we also have the food and nutrition security, the National Food and Nutrition Security Policy, which is undergoing review by Cabinet Directive. We are reviewing it to ensure that issues of food safety really are anchored and sink into the policy. They are a bit hanging. And currently, we are also, we've been given a chance to come up with a food and agriculture policy, authority, which is going to actually address, among other issues, food safety. So when you talk of food safety, then you are talking of aflatoxin. You cannot go without mentioning aflatoxins or mycotoxins. And we work hand in hand at policy level to implement the national grain policy. I thought our grain council would be here, but we work hand in hand. Like I said, you cannot work alone as an entity in the fight against mycotoxins.
All right.
Because along the value chain.
Admittedly, Mr. Tumwesige, but in the meantime, you heard Professor telling you the hit that we are taking. Our maize can't go across the country. It's a health challenge. You heard the loss that his father registered on his farm. In the meantime, as a stopgap measure, what are we doing? Because some of the interventions may not necessarily need policies or laws, or for instance, awareness. Are your extension workers armed with the information to actually tell farmers?
Actually, thank you, Mr. Okaka. I really wanted to say that we have the National Extension Policy. We have a robust agriculture extension policy in this country, and of course under local government. And we have developed materials. I think Professor Kai is the biggest author of these materials, and some of the ICE materials, information communication extension materials, and translated in a number, he will tell us, in a number of local dialects. Make sure that our people understand this complex science. We have the aflatoxin mitigation action plan, plus a guide developed with the help of development partners to ensure that our people really understand. And we have the post-harvest loss reduction strategy for grains. And these have been disseminated to districts. And well, disseminating them is one, but actually is one.
Have you followed up? Maybe most of them are actually gathering dust.
The problem is, we still have a problem of sinking awareness, awareness creation.
I want to see a situation where the extension workers actually go into communities, like the planting season is on now, and start guiding farmers, even on what they are planting, how they should groom that crop, to actually grow up and avoid having toxins at the time of harvest, how they should handle. That is the real business we should be doing now, Mr. Message.
We're doing that.
Are you
doing that, but we may not be really 100%, given the fact that we have gaps in the extension services, the recruitment. We're not 100%. We are lacking, but at least we're doing that to the extent that some local governments that have taken heed of our extension knowledge have now formulated local ordinances. Kakumiro, I think Mwende is one of them. Ordinances against, when it comes to poor handling of grains. So I think we are doing something.
All right. Professor.
Yes, please.
Do you think the ministry is actually doing enough, or you can actually advise them on the best way to confront this challenge?
Well, our biggest input has been generating data to
push them,
to confirm to them that this is a real problem, and we have also participated in generating information that is actually contained in the aflatoxin action plan that he has talked about. Actually, that was a 5-year plan.
What does that action plan say, Professor?
Let's try to break 2018 up to 2023 plan was talking about the strategies, the means of actually minimizing the effects of aflatoxin in this country, including awareness campaigns, including enhancing research, including coming up with technologies that appropriate technologies that farmers can use. As I said, they're just using rudimentary technologies, drying on bare ground, beating the grain during shelling and threshing, etc., which actually predispose the produce to aflatoxin contamination. Then coming up with simple, materials which address each and every level of the value chain. That has been our work. But I think, as he has said, the extension, services, including even training the extension, workers themselves, they have always come to Kabanyolo. That's where I've done a lot of training. So I think when it comes to now implementation, that's where the challenge is. Yeah.
Mr. Psumami,
Yes, please.
the interventions that are being undertaken, are they adequate, or we need actually to scale up?
There is still a big gap to scale up. I will agree that consumer awareness is very key. And I'll also go to your concern where you're saying the extension worker. We still have a big gap. Again, you said people in suits may not understand what is on ground. Currently, I think the ratio of an extension worker is one extension worker at 1,800 farm households. And recommended is one extension worker to 500. So there's a gap. I think currently the ministry has recruited almost 3,200. That is a few years back. Some have died, some have gone for greener pastures. But the ultimate is they needed about 9,500 extension workers. So there's a gap. And still every day, still funding. The last financial year we had that scenario where extension workers were financed. We are being paid salaries but not facilitated to go to the farmers.
To the field.
Yeah, so everybody has a role to play. Parliament does not understand what an extension worker does. And when they go down there, they say, what are you doing? But this person is overwhelmed.
Parliament has a committee on agriculture. Really, those people understand what extension workers do.
They wouldn't cut budgets.
Recently they actually had a report about aflatoxins, and it was discussed on the floor of the House. And almost what they were talking about is what Professor is saying here. So it means they also understand the challenge at hand.
Yeah.
And we're in the budgeting process.
They understand the challenge, but then their interventions don't match what exactly. And you see, this scenario of you get good ambassadors, they understand the concept. The parliamentarians who were looking at aflatoxins 10 years ago are not the ones pushing new policy. Every time we have a parliament, we are not saying they should stay forever to understand the system. Yeah, but generally, there is a big gap on awareness. Consumer awareness is still
huge
lacking,
problem.
And we are trying, but also to simplify the communication for people to understand the actual problem. Again, it goes back to what I said, that we wait to see bad scenarios, outbreaks to be able to interface.
Can I add something?
Yes, Prof.
I don't think it's only the consumer. I don't know what kind of consumer you're talking about, because all of us are actually concerned about aflatoxins, and we are responsible. Talk about the producers, those who process groundnuts.
We are talking about the ordinary consumer going to the market to buy portion. They do not understand whether there is aflatoxin in it or not.
Yes,
How can they tell?
The majority of them actually don't actually understand what it is, and it's not easy to tell that the produce, is aflatoxin, because even to some extent, some clean grains may also contain aflatoxins. The fungus could have been there before, and then during processing it died. But for me, I'm really concerned about each and everybody who participates in the value chain. I was going to talk about the processors of groundnuts. Go to those who are milling groundnuts. They double as both processors and also consumers. But are they aware that what they are doing is wrong? Because they just mill rotten, broken, everything, and they just combine those together and then they sell.
All right. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. We need to go for a break now. When we return, we'll be digging deeper into this discussion, because when you look back this week and even the past week, there have been very, very big stories dominating the media headlines, where concerns have been expressed about the kind of food we are actually eating in this country. And like they normally say, you are what you're eating. Let's go for a break. When we return, the gentlemen in studio will continue to share with us, especially on the best way forward. How can we deal with this problem, looking at the challenges we continue facing, funding, policy-wise, among others. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We continue after this break.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Ramadan is here, a time to connect with Allah and find spiritual wholeness. The Sheraton Kampala Hotel has prepared a daily iftar buffet dinner with Middle Eastern and local dishes at the Al Haim tent, specially prepared for the Muslim community, starting at 7 p.m. with a 50% discount for children between ages 4 and 12. Sheraton Kampala also has special room rates for individuals and families with subhir inclusive. The Sheraton Kampala Hotel, keeping the community at heart. For more details and reservations, visit Sheraton Kampala social media platforms or call 0741 001 109. Ramadan Kareem.
Terms of business with Housing Finance Bank and meet your business needs with ease. Get unsecured bid bonds of up to 500 million shillings within 24 hours. That's not all. Housing Finance Bank is also offering other short-term facilities, including performance guarantees, advance payment guarantees, contract financing, export and import financing, invoice discounting, and so much more. Contact our trade finance team today on 0417-707-595. You can also call our contact center on 0800-211-082 or WhatsApp 0771 888 755 or visit any of our Housing Finance Bank branch nearest to you. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy. Housing Finance Bank is regulated by Bank of Uganda, and customer deposits are protected by the Deposit Protection Fund up to 10 million Uganda shillings. Terms and conditions apply. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. My name is Kenneth Lukagandason, your host. A topic of discussion today, the challenge of aflatoxins in Uganda. I'm speaking to Professor Achille Okaya. He is from the Department of Food Technology and Nutrition, Makerere University. He's also a researcher on aflatoxins. He has been doing that for over 20 years. And in studio also is Mr. David Tumwesige. He's a Senior Agricultural Officer in charge of nutrition at the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries. And Mr. Grace Musimami Keziron. He's a food safety evangelist, but also General Secretary of the Uganda Forum for Agricultural Advisory Services. Now, let's look at the dangers. We looked at a number of issues that come with it, including liver cancer, the issue of trade. But during the break, it appears that there are so many other impacts that are likely to be caused by aflatoxins, health-wise,
Yes.
that we need actually to make Ugandans aware of so that they can take action. Professor, I'll come to you and then I'll go to Mr. Tumwesiye.
Thank you very much. Yes, when I was elaborating the effects of aflatoxin, especially the healthy impact, I left out some issues that I think our listeners need to know about, why we are actually particularly concerned about aflatoxins. There is the problem of stunting. You know, our children, especially the children who are less than 5 years, you know, they have been found to be, short compared to their age. And aflatoxin has been directly, implicated in that effect. Because if a mother, consumes the aflatoxin, contaminated foods, even the breast milk will be containing aflatoxins. Aflatoxins can also cross the placenta, and go and affect the fetus in the body, So meaning that in the womb, meaning that the effects actually start right when the child is still, young. And then when the child is born, if the mother is continuing to eat posho and, millet, cassava, which is contaminated with aflatoxins, the breast milk will contain that. We have proved beyond reasonable doubt that, the breast milk contains aflatoxins. So you can see now weaning, when a child is weaned, sometimes weaning is at 3 months, 6 months, because mothers might be the working category. So you find out that they start feeding them on porridge, which is also contaminated with aflatoxins. So the effect actually now continues and continues, and that's why even cancer has been detected in younger children. The other effect that people would want to hear about, which has been recently now mentioned, is the effect on manhood. Aflatoxins have been linked to reducing the sperm count, making men impotent. So we have to be very, very, very careful.
You want to scare people?
Yes, we have to scare people. These are facts. They have been, they have been proved beyond reasonable doubt that it is actually affecting for both animals and human beings. So it is not easy.
All right.
Right. And so many other health effects.
Yes, Mr. Tumwesiye, what else should we expect going forward from the ministry in terms of intervening, helping the farmers, the producers, even the consumers to avoid the danger of aflatoxins, to actually ensure that the food that we produce in this country meets the standards? You talked about earlier the interventions that you're trying to put in place, but most of them might take some good time, like coming up with an authority, like you talked about, coming up with a policy. All those seem to be longer term.
I also talked about the action plan that is in place.
The action plan, okay.
That we have in place.
Let's look at this action plan.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you, Prof, for that input. And in agriculture, since I'm from the Ministry of Agriculture, I may concentrate on saying that the mycotoxin, in particular aflatoxins, do not only affect health, but they affect production, productivity, and profitability of agriculture, and ultimately food security. I'll give an example. Like he said, his dad in Mubende lost those number of birds. That's already a loss in agriculture economically, and the profit is going down. But at the same time, if you are rearing broilers, they'll never put on weight. They will be stunted. And for the number of eggs, the trays will never get the trays we expected to get in a record time, because aflatoxins are nutrient binders. They all bind the nutrients, and then the birds will never use. So that's a big effect. Having said that, 2023, government passed the animal feed bill. And that bill is a law which is going now to, we are now trying to implement, we have started implementing, in ensuring that all animal feed manufacturers in this country, maybe if that bill was in place, professors, dad's birds wouldn't have died because of poor feeds manufactured in rudimentary ways. Now, all feed manufacturers, exporters, importers, and dealers have to be monitored. There is a committee that is now headed by the Commissioner animal production and
To look at the animal
to
feed.
look at animal feed safety so that we have safe animal feeds. That's an intervention. And secondly, we are continuing, we're enhancing our extension training. This time around, the center, it is what we call backstopping, technical backstopping. We are not going to leave it to the local government extension officers only, but plans have been plans are underway and budgets are being made to ensure that the ministry technically backstops district extension officers to go and deepen the campaign and awareness about aflatoxin and mycotoxins. Yeah.
And this should be an easy thing for you.
Sure.
If you do a strategy of zoning, you know where maize is mainly
Sure,
grown.
yeah.
Go to those farmers there and tell them what to do. Go in areas where you think the dangers are likely to emerge to be able to avoid that particular problem. Mr. Msimami, as a consumer at home now, I'm going to a market, I want to buy food. What are some of the things I should look out for in order to avoid probably buying food that may not be actually good to my body?
As a consumer, both elite and local, if you go into the market, we encourage people to label, but you know our marketplace here, people label and still you will not find the quality that you deserve, because this calls for interventions like UNBS to certify most of these foods that are on the market. Recently there was something called the Chew Mark, insisting that all products in the market should have a Chew Mark, where you know that you need to look out for this. However, there are companies that have been around, and these have been like Sesako.
Yeah.
Sesako, East African Foods. These guys have been around, and traditionally they've been doing well in, you know, the sustainability in the market means they are following certain standards. However, for someone in the rural, it still becomes hard that we cannot say only those that are going to access, but even in the whole preparation of the food, we need now to be very conscious and ourselves. I mean, people, most of the Ugandans produce what they eat. They get the same maize, take it to the mill. They keep removing small quantities, take to the mill, bring back home, eat for 2 weeks, go back, take another. But so I think it starts with how do we safeguard this food before we consume it, even when we are not going to the market. So what we've been actually telling people is the most continuous thing is please, good storage is very key. Drying on better surfaces, the tarpaulin is the most common, and sorting. And when you sort and you see that this is not good, it is important that this is not given again to the chicken or to the animals, because again you'll consume it.
Normally the bad ones
It's a
are the
cycle.
ones left for the animals.
Exactly.
Which is wrong.
Yeah, we've actually this campaign, I was told it is going deep to the schools, because head teachers are buying from parents in a swap for school fees, and some are buying in bulk. But are they testing the kind of meal grains that they are giving our children?
Actually, they should start testing portion that is consumed in schools.
Yes. And then the students that are going with grab at school, we've all gone with groundnuts, and you eat and they are sour. And when you taste they are sour, some are good, then there is a sour one you consume comfortably. But these are already infested with aflatoxins. And many young people are eating, and you expect them, like my brother Twesje said, that these are nutrient binders. You expect that child to excel extremely well when actually is eating a product that is depriving nutrients. So the awareness still goes to bringing all stakeholders together to be able to identify, but also to see. What was so catching, I'll again deviate a little, is about when you talk about nutrient binders. All people with these chronic diseases, diabetes, pressure, HIV, sickle cells, they need the basic is they need good nutrient components. And these people are eating all these aflatoxins, and then they are actually compromising their health and the immunity. So it's a whole thing that I think sensitization and awareness becomes very key, and also to try and I think there are testers everywhere. When you go to Chisenyi, you'll find people sieving the good one. Then they say that is grade 1. Then the others, okay, there are people, the consumers will eat anything without. So consumer awareness is where we need to be.
All right, we have some feedback actually coming in from the listeners, unless there's somebody who wants to add on. Yes, Mr. Messi.
Yes, quickly.
Please, come closer.
Quickly, as an effort, I would request Professor Kaya's national aflatoxin focal person in Uganda. I hope you knew that. He's the focal person in the country, yes.
Professor.
Yes. He will tell us about the biocontrol. Government is trying the biocontrol through the AflaSafe technology. He, as an authority, will tell us about the same, how far we have reached. And then, of course, this is with NARO. And plans have been underway under our researchers in NARO to breed against aflatoxin resistance, I don't know, or tolerance, to get those varieties that are tolerant. That would be a long-term solution. And then the rapid aflatoxin kit testing, like you put in your pocket. If I want to buy, I'll test and see. If I find aflatoxin levels high, I'll not buy. Those would be very quick. But I wanted also to say that 40% of the liver cancers, it is said that 40% of the liver cancers in Africa are attributed to mycotoxins. Now, Professor will tell us what is the percentage of liver cancer in this country, if there is data to that effect, for us to show people that really we have a big problem in this country. And lastly, for every parent that has, you may not be eating the posho or the groundnuts, you are eating KFC and the rest, but think of your children in a boarding school. A child in a boarding school takes maize and maize product in a day 4 times. That is porridge in the morning, breakfast, porridge at break time, lunch, supper, posho, times 7 days a week, times a month, times a term, times a year, times O level, times A level, cumulative effect. So nobody is safe. We need to work hand in hand to fight this problem.
Professor, over to you. There are a number of issues that Mr. Mwesi put across. If you can try to respond to some of them.
Okay, let me mention this so that people can understand. Once aflatoxins are in the food, they are not easy to eliminate. Because some people say, what if I roast my maize? What if I roast my groundnuts? You know,
somebody is actually asking here whether heat does not kill aflatoxin.
It does. Well, it does, but it has to be very high because the temperature at which you normally roast groundnuts is about 120 degrees.
You can trust the heat that is used to prepare portion.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, which is about 100. You know, yeah, to 100. If you roast groundnuts at 150, then you must do it very fast. So that they don't actually burn. But the temperature at which you can destroy aflatoxins is 420 degrees Celsius. 3 times more than the heat that we, roast groundnuts. Meaning that by the time, if you are going to eliminate aflatoxins using heat, you are going to eat ash. Not even charcoal, but ash. So people must therefore, know that prevention is better. However, there are some, techniques which have been used scientifically to remove aflatoxins. Like now we have got the ozone equipment in the northern Uganda, but it's very expensive. Then the binders, aflatoxin binders in feeds, which I encourage all feed manufacturers actually to use. Because the information is there, what percentage you're going to add for which particular animal, so that at least they bind these toxins because they are chemicals in nature.
And so where is research taking us? Anything that we should expect in the near future?
Yes, research is doing quite a lot because we are now able to know the levels which actually affect which type of animal, which type of human being. Then the AflaSafe, as you said, there is a product that is now, being promoted so that it can now be used by farmers to prevent contamination of aflatoxins to maize, groundnuts, and other produce in the field because the contamination starts from the field. As you know, most of our farmers leave maize to dry in the field for some time, and that's where the problem comes in.
All right.
Yes.
Let's get feedback from the listeners. And
Yes.
I'll begin with this comment. Kenneth, thanks for the program and the guests in studio. Aflatoxins in Uganda, maize is not the only problem. It's a general post-harvest handling by both the farmers and the wholesalers who buy from the farmers. Take an example of vegetable carried right in front of Radio 1 shopping to Nakasero Market, where loaders are even sleeping on top of the greens to be eaten. Get to Nakasero, see how greens vegetables are dumped, dirty, soggy grounds. Please, Kenneth, drum up to end poor post-harvest handling of foods. That's a listener who left a comment at this radio station. And then we have another comment coming in here. Kenneth, ask those gentlemen in studio, is this aflatoxin thing a new thing or just a hoax? I am over 50 years and I've been eating maize since childhood in the village from even poor storage facilities, but I didn't see anyone dying of aflatoxin. In boarding schools, we used to consume posho processed from poor quality maize, but I didn't see anyone falling sick because of aflatoxin. And then somebody else writes in and says, good to carry out sensitization, but I hope it won't be the farmers advising the extension workers. I don't know what that means. Well, we have another comment, aflatoxins in food. Anderson, you rightly said it, that it's guys like the guests in studio in suits, plus other very few ones in the population who know about it. In general, 85% of the population lack that information. The policies plus action plans your guests are talking about have always remained on the bookshelves. If the farmers in Uganda were practically supported, they would positively respond. E.g., World Food Program buys most of the maize for the posho they feed refugees in Uganda from Kenya. And you can't blame them since they are duty-bound to protect the refugees. We have another comment from Okelo Patrick Bonyo, who is listening in from Busega. Farmers need guidance from planting to harvest period, but in most cases, farmers are left on their own. Government can use the LOC system to advocate for proper harvest and post-harvest handling. Good evening, Radio 1. Doesn't heat kill aflatoxins? That was an issue we dealt with. Why is it that our grandparents who lived majorly on cereals did not suffer from this challenge? Then we also have another comment here. Aflatoxins, personally, I have long experience in post-harvest handling. This problem became harder with liberalization. Waste no more breath. I can say we have a reasonable mass who well know the dangers being mentioned, but as long as the farmer and the middleman can get money, then they cannot bend their back. And that's a comment there from that listener. Then we have another comment here. Good evening, Brother Anderson. I was given birth in the mountains of Elgon in Mudadiri East. I grew up eating posho, and we are grinding the maize manually, and such problems were not seen. Why now? I remember even in the 1980, we ate posho brown in color that came from India. That is James in Namasuba. Very quickly, let's try to respond to some of these issues. Maybe I'll begin with you, Mr. Mwesige.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all the contributors to this program. It's good that they are listening. And actually, I'm happy to say that we are creating awareness already, the fact that the listenership is responding. But quickly, I want to put a disclaimer and say it's not true that WFP buys maize from Kenya, because Kenya is the biggest importer of our maize in Uganda. It could be buying from other countries, that could be true, but with Kenya, we supply most of the maize to Kenyan traders. Now, like we said, we don't want, I don't want to be on the defensive. We still have a long way to go in creating in deepening awareness. And it's not true, again, to say that farmers will educate the experts, because they are not aware of what we are talking about. All it takes is that we need, what I perceive from that is that we should stop talking about policy development, but implement the policy frameworks up to the grassroots person. I take that one in good faith, and really, that is the way to go.
All right. We still have more comments coming in. What do you say about cassava drying, which is taking place in Busia, Musita Road, and yet government would have bought dryers for villages other than giving money to individuals? The worst are the so-called educated who don't advise the decision makers, who are just appointed to fill positions. That's a comment from Rico. Said if we succeed through primary societies, cooperatives, then the culture and knowledge would spread and be appreciated in our homes. Somebody wants us to do it through societies. Yiga Samuel listening in from Namlondo Zone. Thank you for the program. What caused the problem is agriculture. and market is UNB's failure to implement its work. Kintu Kidogo is the trouble causer. That's why you find toxic products on the market. The discussion in studio is pertinent, but I have two questions. Have you realized that the new breeds of maize on the market have poor covering ability, and the grain is exposed to the extent that birds also go for them before harvesting, leading to exposure to fungi? Then he says, do we realize that the polybags that we use for storage are sweet for storage, sweat, and are not as porous as sisal gunny bags used to be? Do we have any East African arrangements to ignite sisal production for better porous storage of grains? That's a comment from Fred. Another comment, what food or herbs can I eat to wash the aflatoxins out of my body? That's a comment from Nicholas. And Professor Rice said, do aflatoxins affect the mental health of pupils since they eat potholes, since they eat posho in schools? That's a comment there that wraps up our feedback from the listeners. Mr. Msamami.
Yeah. Mine is, again, awareness is the key issue here. You can see the gaps, but I also appreciate our listeners. It is a clear indicator that there is need for information, but also some are aware, but they think we need better interventions. Why I think this is going to be a different story all through. There has been so many launches. Someone says, is this just coming up 50 years, and we've been having this before. Apparently, you may not see many. We get liver cancer, for example, but we never attribute it because it's a long-term process. It takes long to come.
You don't know eventually the cause of the disease that kills somebody.
Yes. So this is where people need to. But okay, back to the intervention saying this is just, we've had so many campaigns over the years. Like I said, the first time the president pronounced, 2016. But now with support from our partners and FRA, Food Rights Alliance, and different partners are coming together, from extension workers to farmers to students to researchers, and this joint aflatoxin advocacy campaign is going to go national, and it will try. This is where we believe there's new hope. Let people just be very conscious and come and sign up to join us to become new ambassadors to fight aflatoxin.
All right, Professor, you'll have the last word as we leave the studio.
It is not a hoax, as somebody said.
Surely.
Indeed, it is not a hoax. If it was a hoax, Kenya shouldn't have refused our maize. Sudan rejected our maize flour. You know, we are exporting less, as I said, because of that. But what people need to know is that the aflatoxin has come into play these days to sound much more than in the past. Because in the past, you know, maize was regarded as just a food crop. It was not an export crop. But right now, we have opened ourselves. We are trying to export it beyond, you know, our borders. And those people have got strict regulations.
All right.
So they have to test the food, whether you want it or not. But now the other issue about the bags.
Lastly,
the last about the bags which store our grains. I think the bags are not bad, but what people do is not to dry the produce adequately. Once it's not adequately dried, definitely it has to sweat, whether you want it or not.
Lastly, also, it's not new because this problem has been prevailing since 1960 in the U.S.
All right.
And 1971. I think, Professor, you in your research, you said 1971.
Yes.
We had the first case of
aflatoxin.
Exactly. So it's not new.
And then someone said, since
this campaign has just begun, we'll have more time actually to reflect on these issues going forward. But I'm afraid to say this edition of Spectrum comes to an end. Up next, we're going to have a news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano, and to our Muslim brothers and sisters, we wish you joyous time as you celebrate Eid tomorrow. Stay tuned. Radio 1 FM 90 will continue with our normal programming after this.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of this radio station or its management.
Ramadan is here, a time to connect with Allah and find spiritual wholeness. The Sheraton Kampala Hotel has prepared a daily iftar buffet dinner with Middle Eastern and local dishes at the Al Haim tent, specially prepared for the Muslim community, starting at 7 p.m. with a 50% discount for children between ages 4 and 12. Sheraton Kampala also has special room rates for individuals and families with Subhir inclusive. The Sheraton Kampala Hotel, keeping the community at heart. For more details and reservations, visit Sheraton Kampala social media platforms or call 0741 001 109. Ramadan Kareem.
Terms of business with Housing Finance Bank and meet your business needs with ease. Get unsecured bid bonds of up to 500 million shillings within 24 hours. That's not all. Housing Finance Bank is also offering other short-term facilities, including performance guarantees, advance payment guarantees, contract financing, export and import financing, invoice discounting, and so much more. Contact our trade finance team today on 0417-707-595. You can also call our contact center on 0800-211-082 or WhatsApp 0771-888-755 or visit N1 888-755 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 or visit N1 888-755